All right, people. I thought that we might start this one by taking a little bit of a look-see at, well, what we did last time, those roles of the president, the five main roles the president is going to play in our government. President is head of state. That's the ceremonial head of government. You're going to want to smile for the camera, wave to the people, pose for the pictures, all those fun things. Chief executive, they're the boss of government employees. They're the boss of the federal government. They can use executive privilege to hide information. They can play a role in criminal justice with pardons and commutations. They appoint people to jobs. Basically, the end all be all boss of how the government operates, keeping in mind Congress plays that really important role of funding, budgeting, making the laws, etc., etc. This is the boss of how the laws are carried out. Commander in Chief, big boss of the military, they can send troops places to do things. Those things will oftentimes look like war, even though war's not been declared. Remember the War Powers Resolution does kind of limit the president's power there, but it just means he has to ask permission. Plus, for the first 48 hours, he can kind of do what he wants to. So a lot can be done in 48 hours. Chief diplomat, president's job to deal with other countries, specifically the leaders of those other countries. He's going to recognize their governments. He's going to negotiate treaties. He's going to have those handshake executive agreements. Finally, the president is chief legislator. He influences the making of laws by recommending laws that he sees fit, by vetoing laws, pocket vetoes, messages, signing statements, and finally those executive orders that he can use to really kind of change the way that laws are being carried out, just how he impacts the lawmaking process. And then finally, do keep in mind there are two minor rules, less important. He's the chief of party, he's the head of the political party. Donald Trump is the head of the Republican Party right now. Obama was the head of the Democrats. You don't need me to explain that to you. Finally, head of the economy, even though the president doesn't play that big of a role, they're going to always get credit when the economy's good and blame when the economy's bad. So I thought we'd start with a little recap of that. Amazing editing abilities. All right, with that under our belts, we're going to pick up on slide 25. And this is all about running for president. A lot of it we already covered. That's the good news. It'll be recap and review, and we can kind of fly through it. Anything that's new, I will stop and check on. So have your study guides, and your PowerPoints ready to go. Slide number 25 is where we're picking up. Primary elections. We've already talked about this. Remember, it's kind of like the Final Four, where we determine, who's coming from one side to who's coming to the other to take on each other in the general election. The Republicans will have their little tournament. Democrats will have their little tournament in each state with the primary election. We've been talking about that plenty, so I think you've got it under control. You're voting for delegates to attend a national convention. And the vote's not always binding, but for the most part, people are going to attend. When I was asked to attend a national convention, I was working for that presidential candidate. So it's not like I was just going to change my mind and switch to someone else when I got there. The delegates that are sent will all stand up. Remember, we watched the YouTube video where they talked about the waves of grain, and y'all learned what America's Samoa was. All the delegates stand up and they say who they want. We keep a little running score going on, and yeah, whoever gets the most delegates wins, except for the Democrats. The Democrats also will use super delegates. These are members of the party, like governors or senators who are being rewarded for being members of the party for a long time. They get invited to the national convention without actually being elected to get there, and they get to play a role as well. Oftentimes, superdelegates are going to represent what we call the party establishment. Who the big wigs and the suits inside the political party are going to want. But the majority of the time, they just go along with whatever the elected representatives, the elected delegates want, because if they didn't, well, people would get all angry, and you know how that goes. Whoever wins an early state like Iowa or New Hampshire becomes a front runner, and they get all the media attention. We saw that happening early on. And that's why states started moving their primaries early and earlier, so they could get that media attention, so that the news media would come stay in their hotels and fill up at their gas stations and eat in their restaurants. That's called front loading. where presidential primaries are moved to the earliest part of the campaign. Old slide here, they are not, we've kind of backed off on front loading, so don't mind that comment about January and February. I do apologize for that. In the midst of all this, didn't do much proofreading on my old slides. Then we have the National Convention, where the nomination for president's officially made. We're going to know who the Democrat nominee is before we get to the Democratic convention. We can watch the news, we can count, we can figure it up. So it's really just a formality to have a little party and show some pride and make some speeches. So once you're the nominee, now you've got to get people to vote for you. Back in the bad old days, campaigning was very personalized. And what I mean was it was personalized to you, the voter. I'd walk up to your door, I'd see that you had some toys in the yard, and I'd ask you about your kids and try and get you to like me that way. I see that you got a Denver Broncos flag, flying in your front yard. I'd talk about the Broncos and ask about if Drew Lock's going to be a better quarterback than Joe Flacco was. Whatever it took to get you to like me, I'd personalize the campaign to you. Now the campaigns are being more personalized to the candidates, and the reason is that Donald Trump doesn't need me knocking on your door. Donald Trump comes in your house while you're eating dinner and watching Wheel of Fortune through his commercials, through the campaign advertising. And because of that, everything is becoming much, much more focused on the candidate rather than being focused on the political party or being focused on you, the voter. Rather than volunteers of old that just went out and did campaigning because the right thing to do, now most campaigns hire highly paid political consultants. These are professionals whose job it is to devise a strategy, come up with a strategy, and manage a campaign. And their number one job is to make the candidate visible and appealing. Get the candidate out in front of people and make them appealing. Now, what's appealing to some might not be appealing to others. You may not find Donald Trump appealing, but he does appeal to a certain segment of the population. Same as you may not find Bernie Sanders appealing, but he does appeal to that certain percentage of a population. What political consultants are doing is they're really just doing the math on, okay, who do we need to vote for us and how can we make them like us? So what a consultant will do is rather than going on some stuffy news show on Sunday morning or doing an hour-long podcast on the benefits of their health care plan, they'll send their candidate out on the late night television shows. Bill Clinton playing the saxophone on Arsenio Hall, John Kerry on the Jay Leno show on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, wearing a leather jacket, riding a motorcycle, looking like the common man. And there's George W. Bush giving Oprah Winfrey a kiss. Right there. It happened on your screen. That this is how you get the people that are running for office, the candidate out in front of the people who are going to vote for them. When I was working campaigns, where are we going next? We're going wherever the people are. The monster truck rally, the boat show, the picnic, the church function, I don't care. If there's 100 voters there, let me get my candidate in front of them so that candidate is visible and becomes appealing. We'll use opinion polls, see what the people think about our candidates. You all know all about opinion polls at this point. Remember, a tracking poll kind of keeps up with the candidate and how they're doing on a daily basis as the election day approaches. And we'll use those focus groups we've talked about before, where we bring in people that we know are going to need to vote for our candidate and start asking them questions. We tape the responses. If I know that I need single mothers to vote for my candidate, I'm going to ask questions of single mothers to see what they care about, what they believe in. And if those are in line with what my candidate wants, we're going to make sure that out in front, my candidate, our candidate, is going to be saying things that appeal to that particular group. And yeah, that is where we're going to leave it for this week. I'm not getting cut off by a 15-minute timer this time, so that's certainly fun. Again, if you have any questions, make sure to put them in the class website under discussions. There's an entire forum for your content questions. Any thoughts, feedback, or problems with the YouTube video itself, that can go to my email. Hope everyone's being safe. Hope everyone's having a good week. And this should be the last video for this week. So I will see you next week as we continue into online education. Goodbye, everybody.